Mandy is an ultra-violent revenge horror thriller starring Nicolas Cage, which means it's inevitably going to be framed and released in the vein of a just-for-fun midnight movie sort of experience that you're meant to half-watch, half-gawk at the absurdity of, clap and cheer when the famously mercurial Cage says it as something crazy, and otherwise just ride the high of like some tossed-off Sharknado-type experience. And those who go in expecting that may end up on the disappointed side, though, as even though Mandy is indeed a highly stylized, brutal revenge film in which Cage portrays a lumberjack wreaking brutal revenge on a drugged-up religious cult deep in the wilderness, and features terrifying body mod biker gangs, crossbow killings, drug trips, villain monologues, battle axe blacksmithing, tiger uncaging, and chainsaw fencing, nearly all of it rendered either through the neon haze of a blacklight poster or the high contrast primary hues of an airbrushed panel van. It also presents more as a stark, melancholy mood piece than a heavy metal horror show. As to what the mood of that mood piece actually is, it's sort of hard to actually describe, unless of course you've seen director Panos Cosmatos' prior film Beyond the Black Rainbow, in which it's pretty easy, exactly the same mood as that. Dark, unsettling, deliberately paced, with a story and characters mainly sketched out in background details after the fact, while the foreground narrative concerns itself with a fairly simple A to B through line overwhelmed by an omnipresent sense of dread conjured in the music and colors of early 1980s pulp sci-fi fantasy ephemera. And when I say it's simple, I mean it. Most of the characters barely speak, especially not Nicolas Cage, and those who do a lot of talking don't really have a lot to say, and that's kind of the point of their characters. The setup really is as basic as a Manson-esque cult of LSD burnouts called the Children of the New Dawn, led by a failed wannabe folk singer played by Linus Roach, formerly of one of the Law and Orders, committing an act of seemingly random drug-fueled violence on Cage's quietly withdrawn cabin-dwelling lumberjack and Andrea Riseborough as his wife Mandy. Cage's character, implied to be both a recovering alcoholic with a dark past, possibly as some kind of soldier, mercenary, or worse, again, mood piece, not a lot of words in this one, retrieves a crossbow from an old friend, forges a custom battle axe from scratch, and goes to hunt them down in revenge. That's it, that's the movie. What's fascinating isn't so much that both Cosmatos and Cage both commit to so fully treating the material seriously. Anyone trying to make a midnight movie the authentic way already knows that the best versions of the real thing were never trying to be jokes, and as the son of the late director of Cobra, Rambo 2, and of unknown origin, Cosmatos is likely very familiar with this concept. The serious emotional tone they're going for isn't just seriousness, but sadness and regret rather than anger or righteousness, which would be the easy way out. Cage gets his moments of fury and anger, but for the most part he's playing a very human, very tired, and not at all young man, someone who's lived a very difficult and mostly unhappy life, does a hard physical job for a living, and had only just thought he'd managed to carve out a measure of actual happiness in the world, only to lose it. And that's also the case with Mandy herself, and even Roach's thoroughly detestable bad guy. Some have suggested it's a spoiler to describe this, but the film doesn't present it as such, so neither will I. Despite the stylization of everything, there are only a very few subtle allusions to the notion that anything remotely truly supernatural might be at play at Mandy. For the most part, dream sequences and blissed out visions, these people are all thoroughly, in most cases, pathetically human. They're also just miserable and desperate to escape into a mind-altering hellscape. As with Beyond the Black Rainbow, it would appear that Cosmatos, while not making message movies per se, has something of a bone to pick with the back half of the New Age pop psychedelia movement. For Roach, it's the ego trip of lording it over his followers. For them, it's religious fervor. For Cage, it's evidently at one point booze, and then whatever healing effect Mandy's presence had on him, which Roach in turn wants to possess. And now it's the absence of thrill killing and revenge, with Cosmatos' penchant for long, slow takes, long, slow scenes, long, slow builds, long, slow everything. The film has actually been running for an hour and 15 minutes before the title card Mandy appears on screen. Eerie synth rock scores, tight medium shot compositions to drive home the feeling of being compartmentalized inside these people's heads along with them, helped out by the cheeky conceit of the camera only ever pulling back out for fantasy shots that ground us suddenly in animated sequences or pulp fantasy matte paintings. It's really quite an effect. Mandy will not be for everyone. The violence will put off a lot of audiences. The fact that you're not supposed to laugh at it will put off others. The fact that it's much more of a lean back, take it in, soak it up, and talk about it after movie to groove on than Nicolas Cage live action Metalocalypse episode it's being sold as will likely feel like a bait and switch to many more. But I was really into it for what it's worth. I think Cosmatos is a fascinating new filmmaker, and I'm glad to see this finding an audience. Check it out yourself. 3 stars, I recommend it.